Hello guys, and welcome back to my channel. It's Alyssa, Nerdy Nurse Reads here, and we are finally going to do my favorite reads from 2020. So I got myself a very tiny, like it's tiny, can of rosé cider. So we're like celebratory. It feels like we should be celebrating. We survived 2020. Okay, so we made it 6 days into January and of 2021, and shit seems to be kind of bad. I'm just gonna hold on to my stuffed animal because that's where we're at. Yeah, so we're gonna just go through my 2020 reads, and I'm too lazy to go find all of the books, and I don't think I even have all the books in hard copy, so I'm just gonna overlay the cover images as we go. I have my trusty planner here, my bullet journal. I finally filled in my best reads of 2020 list. Now, this is not a top 10, this is in no particular order because I went through each and every month on my Bookly app, and because I sort my books by genre and by month on Bookly, which is the app I use to track my reading because I hate Goodreads. Until Goodreads updates itself, that's what I do. And I've started using my, if you watched my resolutions video, you saw this journal, which is my book review journal, which is I've started using here, and then this will eventually funnel into my blog website, which I'm still sort of working on. But I've been finding this really handy in lieu of Goodreads. So I basically have worked myself around having to have a Goodreads account. So yeah, so that's what I do. If you also hate Goodreads and feel like they really need to desperately update it, that's what I do. Bookly tracks all the books that I read, so I can set a yearly goal just like on Goodreads, and I can track all the hours that I read, everything. And then, so what I did, I'm rambling now, I'm sorry.
Follow my channel, I just ramble about shit.
Also, if I look like I'm wearing basically the same outfit as in another video, it's because I'm filming a bunch of videos today, and the only thing I've changed is that I put on a sweater. Don't care. So yeah, so I went through every month and I picked out 3 books max each month that I thought were the best reads of the month. It is too hard for me to pick out like 10 books. I read 200 and something books, like 260 almost books last year. That's too many books to pick 10. It's too many books for my lazy butt to go through and be like, these are my favorite fantasies, and these are my favorite graphic novels, and these are my favorite, I don't know. I read everything. I read way too many different genres: adult, YA, fantasy, graphic novels, classics, romance, mystery. There's too many things for me to go through. So this is my list, and we're just gonna hop right into it with January. There's some things that I'm surprised are not on it, and that's because of the other things that I read during that month. So if there's things that you know me and you thought might be on this list, it probably should be on this list, but there was something else in that month that I read that was better. And these are not books that came out in 2020. This is strictly books that I read in 2020. I know sometimes that's a touchy subject here. When people make their best reads, they sometimes want them to be things that were released in 2020 or the year that they're talking about, but I don't care. I have a lot of backlist books. I read a lot of backlist books. If I really liked it, it's going on this list. Don't care. Anyway, enough of that. Let's have a drink and let's just go into it. So for January, my 3 books for January are The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, of course. This book was just, I hated The Night Circus. You know that I hate The Night Circus. If you follow me or you know anything about me, you know I hate The Night Circus. Now, I only read The Starless Sea because my friend Naomi loved it so much, and when it comes to adult literature, we usually like the same thing, and I absolutely adored this book. It is definitely very cerebral. It's not like a lazy read. It's not an easy read. It's not, it takes work, but it's just beautiful. There's so many just vignettes of stories throughout the book that are just gorgeous. I loved the main characters. I loved some of the little side stories. I love a story about stories. I loved how it felt like a video game. like a role-playing video game where you're in the story and you're building it. I loved it. I thought it was beautiful and fantastic. The next book is Illuminae, which you're gonna see the series a couple times in this overview, I think, or this wrap up, I mean, because I absolutely love this series. So Illuminae blew my mind. I got the audiobook because I usually get the audiobook for most things. I read the audiobook alongside the reading the text, and if you don't know Illuminae, if you've been living under a rock, it is like a mixed media book, and it's very interactive. And when you put on the audiobook, which is basically like made like an old-timey radio show in the sense that it has sound effects and multiple narrators and all these other things, you are fully immersed in this world, and it is phenomenal. Like, it is hands down one of the best reading experiences I've ever had, and I wish I could go back and experience that for the first time again. And then also in January, mostly because it made me actually not hate this series, and my friend who pushed me forward, Lacey, was right. A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas was actually really freaking good, and I really enjoyed that book. Now, I did not like ACOTAR. Wings and Ruin, A Court of Wings and Ruin was fine. Mist and Fury was stellar. Silver whatever, the novella, I'd like to forget that exists. But Court of Mist and Fury was beautiful. Loved it. I have just started reading Throne of Glass this month, and I have a sneaking suspicion, and we can revisit this later in the year when I get through more of the books. I think I might actually like Throne of Glass more than ACOTAR. That's my that's gonna be my bet. I know this has been really runny lately. Anyway, so that's January. January, done. February. First pick, easy peasy, Thunderhead. We've read the Scythe trilogy this year, and I have to say, it is amazing. It doesn't get talked about nearly enough on Bookstagram and on BookTube, but my favorite book from the entire series was the second book, Thunderhead. I've learned this year that last year I learned that I love AI. I want a fanfic that is Aiden from the Illuminae files, the Thunderhead from the Scythe trilogy, Grigorovich from To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, and I want them to be, and somebody else. Was there another one? Anyway, I just basically want this mashup of like sarcastic and crazy and just interesting AIs in like some sort of weird romance setting. I don't know why. I might be weird, but like I found that those are my favorite characters in these books. And the Thunderhead in the second book in the Scythe Theory series, Thunderhead, is there's just the humanity that is in this AI is crazy, and there are moments where you want to cry. The book is like super fast-paced and amazing, and to top it all off, most of the time the second book in a trilogy is the boring book, and this just really flipped the script on that, and I loved it. Of course, in February, I have to put Fangirl on there. I loved Fangirl so much. It gave me all the feels. It made me so happy. There's nothing about this book that I disliked. Cather is who I wish I could have been brave enough to be, and I was her age. Like, she is, I love it. I cannot say anything bad about this book. Now, I did not necessarily like Carry On. I have not read Wayward Son yet, but Fangirl I loved. And the last book, the third book from February, is The Beekeeper of Aleppo. And The Beekeeper of Aleppo follows the story of Syrian refugees. I think they're Syrian. This is where my brain stops working. Trying to make their way to sanctuary in the UK where they have family. And it's the story of their journey, and it's the story, it mixes in different, almost like lessons from the bees as you go along, because they're beekeepers, and it's just it's a moving and gripping story, and it's a must read for like anybody. It's so beautiful. You have to read it. March, I had to pick A Gentleman in Moscow by Immortals because I love him so much. His writing is phenomenal. He's written 2 books, and I cannot wait. There's a book here floating around. He's written 2 books so far, this and Rules of Civility, and I adore them. I think that this one's even better than Rules of Civility, which is his first novel. And it follows this Russian aristocrat who basically gets put on house arrest in this luxury hotel in Moscow, and you get to follow Russian history, like sort of modern Russian history, through his eyes, through this hotel, using the hotel as a lens to explore what communist Russia was like. It is beautiful. The writing is phenomenal. It is like, you have to read it. Like, if you like literary fiction, you have to read A Gentleman in Moscow. Like, just, I cannot. It's just so good. It's so good. Of course, in March, I also read Crescent City, which I did a whole reading vlog for, which I will put up somewhere, in case anybody wants to watch that again. I also want to reread that this year, but I absolutely loved Crescent City. And at the time, I'd only read the Akotar series. I hadn't read Throne of Glass yet, so I hadn't really experienced Sarah J. Maas, and I like Sarah J. Maas as an adult fantasy writer. I found Crescent City to be amazing. It is very long, and I get that some people feel like some of it can be taken out, but it was phenomenal, especially the very end. It just like sped up. I was crying. It was and then, because I can't choose between them, I read both Tea Dragon books 1 and 2 in March, and I'm just lumping them together. A little bit of a cheat, but the Tea Dragon Society graphic novels, if you've never read them, are the sweetest, most wonderful books you will ever read, and they will just make you happy. They're so wonderful at explaining inclusivity and diversity and different kinds of people that exist in the world and how they're all valuable and good. They talk about disability, they talk about homosexuality, they talk about all kinds of things, and it's just so sweet. And to top it all off, the Tea Dragons are just adorable, and one day I will buy myself a plushie. Just not yet, because plushies are kind of expensive, but one day, maybe I'll ask for it for my birthday. I want a plushie. Anyway, wow, it's like, we've been here for like 15 minutes, and we're only on April. Oh, okay. April, and I think that this may be one of my most memorable books of the year. My mouth doesn't work anymore. Is My Dark Vanessa. This deals with grooming and a sort of Lolita story, and it's incredibly difficult to read. I also listened to it, which is painful. But it is so well done, and it really explores the multi-layered issues that arise from this kind of abuse, from, because it flashes back between today and when this girl was a teenager going through this experience, and it just shows the damage that it really does and how long-reaching it is, and how it's so well done, and it's so uncomfy in all the right ways. Like, you should be uncomfy, and you should also be learning what it's like to groom somebody, because then you'll be able to like spot it and stop it from happening, So it was just such a good, well done book. And I would also recommend you read this memoir, Excavation, that has a similar story, but it's a memoir, and it's very much about this woman's personal experience going through this, as opposed to a fictional retelling. And I think together they are a phenomenal pairing. If you can do that. It's very triggering, I know, but if you can read them, especially if you have children. Learn the signs so you can protect your kids. Anyway, also in April, I've picked Strange the Dreamer, because that book is just so beautifully, torturously romantic and wonderful, and I cannot wait to read Daughter of Smoke and Bone, because I've heard that trilogy is even better than this duology. But Strange the Dreamer was so good. Anyway, And then also in April, I picked, which surprised me, but I picked Dry by Neil Shusterman, because that book had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It essentially deals with the ideas that California has run out of water, there is no water, and what the hell happens when we literally do not have access to our most basic human need. And it just breaks down the chaos that ensues. It is incredibly moving. It is difficult to read at times, and it's just, I was reading it about, like, April's about the time that we didn't have toilet paper and everybody was going crazy and all of that. So the parallels to what was going on at the time that I was reading it were a little bit crazy, and so it was really good. Like, just read it. May, my book picks are The Kings of the Wild, which is, I describe it as like fantasy meets Spinal Tap. It is funny. I thought it was hilarious. It's this band of old warriors that has to go on this mission to save one of their daughters, and it's hilarious. It is so sarcastic. It is so funny. It is brilliantly written. I also read the sequel, Bloody Rose, which was fine, but that first one really just like knocks it out of the park. Two classics, I think, are my next two, and that's All the Light We Cannot See, which is like a World War II set in France historical fiction, which is beautifully written and just phenomenal, and I can't believe it's taken me this long to read it. And The Name of the Wind, which I can understand why some people might not like The Name of the Wind. It's very, very like traditional fantasy, but it reads like a ballad. It reads like you have a bard singing you a ballad. It's very musical. I just really enjoyed it. There was something about it that just connected with my soul. I loved it. I haven't read the second one yet because I'm kind of scared, one, to read the second one because maybe I won't like it as much, and two, I don't know if we're ever gonna get the third book. I just don't know, and I'm scared to keep going. So I will keep you updated if I get there. Sorry for the little quirky butt, but deal with it. June was a great month for reading. In like the middle of the year, it gets really hard because I have some really good books in the middle of the year. But in June, we have The Extraordinaries by T.J. Klune, because this is the first T.J. Klune I ever read, and I absolutely loved him. I listened to the audiobook. I got it from Libro.fm because I get advanced listening copies from them every month, and it is phenomenal. He is phenomenal. I am so glad. It's one of my best finds of the year is finding T.J. Klune, and I'm so excited that I now know that he exists in this world and his writing is so good, and I will slowly devour his entire catalog because he's amazing. Of course, I have to include Gemina because it's my favorite of the Illuminae Files books. We're not going to talk about Obsidio, it's fine, but like Gemina was perfect to me. It was this claustrophobic cat and mouse just chase, and I was in it, and I loved Hannah, and I think Hannah being an artist made the multimedia aspect of it even better. It was so good. It was so well done. I loved it. And then also in June, I absolutely loved Stamped from the Beginning. Again, this is another one of those hard reads, but it was so eye-opening, and I need to get a physical copy, and I want to go back through it with a physical copy and mark it up, because there's so many things that I am ashamed that I didn't know about, and that I'm disappointed in our education system for not teaching it to us, because our history is race in our country is just so disgustingly messed up, how we treat people that don't look like me, and even worse, if I was a man, don't look like a man that looks like me. All right, I don't know where we were. Someone called me and it blacked out my whole phone and shut everything down. We were talking about Stamped from the Beginning. I really just need to not film on my phone, but that's okay. One day I'll get myself a nice digital SLR and it'll all be fine. I just think that Stamped from the Beginning was so well done, and we did such a great job of really going into the nitty-gritty of why things are so fundamentally wrong in this country, and how deeply ingrained it is into the fabric of our nation. and goes a long way to explaining why it's not just an easy fix, and also why you have to keep beating down the door because it's not an easy fix. It is so good. And like, honestly, if you're gonna call yourself an ally, you have to educate yourself, and there are so many books out there for you to educate yourself on what it means to be not white in this country. I'm gonna go that general with it, to be not white in America. And it is not anybody's job to teach you that. It is your job to teach yourself. So I think Stamped is a fantastic resource, and I'm so glad that they made a YA like shorter version, because this thing is like a behemoth. But I'm so glad that they made a YA like smaller, easier to consume version for people that maybe aren't going to be able to sit through a 400, 600, however many pages it is, chunker. Anyway, that's June. July, I absolutely loved this graphic novel called Alone. It made me cry like a baby. It's essentially about this like deformed person whose parents like basically abandoned him in a lighthouse, and I think they die, and so he's like orphaned there in this lighthouse, and he grows up there, and this fisherman just like drops off supplies for him, and one day the fisherman gets a new apprentice, and it's sort of how this apprentice and the deformed guy, like Hunchback of Notre Dame kind of guy, kind of learn to interact in a way. And it's just, and otherwise he has no other human contact, and it's just read it. Like, honestly, go get yourself a copy of it. It's beautiful. The art is phenomenal, and the book, I cried so hard. There's probably like 1,000 words in the entire book, and I cried like a freaking baby. Also loved The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, which I read sort of, I think like really close to Stamped. They kind of bled into each other from one month to the other, but it's basically talking about this lady, Henrietta Lacks, whose cells we still use today to study genetics. I have actually worked with physicians that have worked with these cells, and basically it talks about how many white men have profited from these cells that were essentially stolen from this black lady, and how the family, it talks about the family, it talks about their struggles, it talks about how just discriminatory like our healthcare system has been from the beginning. Like this is not anything new, and it's moving and disgusting and such an important read, and you have to read it. Like, if you ask me for nonfiction recommendations, you're easily gonna get Stamped and The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks easily out of me, and then some other things, but like easily those are right at the top of all my nonfiction recommendations. And then to piggyback off of June, I also read The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune, and this book is amazing. I have not stopped talking about it since I read it. If I ever see anybody post about it, pretty much always write down on below like a comment that's like, thank you for talking about this, I love this book, more people need to talk about it. Like, I want everyone to read this book. It is so good. It's about this school of like children that are demonic and have special powers. It's not really demonic, but they're supposed to be evil, different children than from all the other people, and this guy has to go out there and assess the school on this island, and he basically learns to stop being this rigid bureaucrat, and he learns to love and see nuance, and the kids are phenomenal, and like somehow TJ Klune makes the Antichrist hilarious. It is so good. Like, you have to read this book. We are officially halfway through this. I cannot believe how long this video is going to be, and I'm sorry. There's going to be so many graphics I have to put over it. We're going to try to be good here. Wrap it up. August is good. I read The Companion in August, which is super creepy. If you like graphic novels, if you like gothic novels, if you like gothic horror, if you like a slow burning creepy book, The Companion is fantastic. This girl ends up being a companion to this sick girl in this wealthy person's house, and there's all these weird things that happen, and it's just absolutely creepy. It is so good. I don't want to say too much. I want you to enjoy the creepy ride. If you were looking for an October book, put this on your October list and read it. It is perfect for spooky season. Next is another graphic novel, and that is Flamer, which follows a young boy who's a Boy Scout. He's an Asian American Boy Scout who's also gay, and he's sort of coming to terms with that while he's at Boy Scout camp. And it's definitely set in the 90s, especially based on sort of the derogatory, like harsh language that gets thrown back and forth. It sounds like the way kids used to talk to each other when I was a kid. That really isn't acceptable now, but that's how we talk to each other. And it's really moving, and it's a really well done book, and I love how it deals with understanding like your own personal identity from a racial perspective and also from a sexuality perspective. And I just love all of the books that are coming out for young adults that are exploring these topics, because they did not exist when I was a young adult, and I feel like they would have been so valuable to so many people if they had existed. And they probably did, but in like really small, like niche pockets. But now they're so mainstream. I love it. And last but not least for August was Hood Feminism, which is a fantastic book about how feminism as we know it is really like a white woman led movement, and how there's a lot of things that have left minority women behind, and sort of the inequalities between the women, the groups of women, and it's very eye-opening. And I will say one thing, if you've ever heard anybody, I think the most important takeaways for me were the descriptions of what it's like to be on like WIC or any other benefit, and how the stigma are related to it. And I remember, and I still hear it all the time, is how whenever anybody's on benefits, especially if it's a woman, how the woman gets shamed like she's cheating the system, and how there's oftentimes a lot of stigma around that, and how women sometimes don't even want to use those benefits, but because they don't want to be stigmatized and feeling like they're cheating a system, but then also like you have to do it because how are you going to get by, and just all the nuances of that, and how much that's really pushed onto like the minorities and not onto like white women. And it's just, I don't know, it was just a really fascinating and eye-opening read, and I encourage everyone again to read that. I don't know if I have any more. I don't have any more non-fiction. Well, maybe one more sort of memoir on the list. The rest of this I think is all fiction. Anyway, September, we're getting there. We're on the last row. We are on September. We're in the last third, final third. Okay. September, The Last True Poets of the Sea was a beautiful story. I read this with Manic Femme. She actually sent it to me, and thank you. It is just, I read it in like a couple of hours. It was so freaking good. It's just a really beautiful story about dealing with grief and identity, and it's got a fantastic friend group, and it's got a little bit of magical realism, and it's so good. It needs to be talked about more. It is really good. Go read it. I loved When No One Is Watching. I thought that the way it discussed the gentrification of neighborhoods was powerful. I thought that the introduction of human experimentation was like, thank you, because that's a topic that we don't talk about enough, and we did do that, and we still, I feel like, kind of do, like, to minority races. And it was so like phenomenally done by Alyssa. Like, it is so good. I loved it. I thought it was great. I'm not mad at it. I enjoyed it. I think everyone should read it. I know that there was some back and forth about whether it's really a thriller, and it's not for me to decide that. It is for the readers to decide that, and I thought that it was really well done, and I consider it a thriller. So everyone else, anyway, I'm gonna take my hat out of that ring. It's a thriller. It's really good. Everyone else can shut up. And then of course I had to pick in September From Blood and Ash, because we all know I am a hoe for vampires, and that book was so good, especially the very end, and I love Hawk, and can't wait for book 3. It's so good. So good. That's all I'm gonna say. It's amazing. October, I picked In the Dream House, which is a memoir that is using this house as a metaphor for explaining different things in the author's life, and I never get her name fully right, so I'm not good. It's like Carmen Machado something. I always get it wrong. There's like it's 3 words and I always get it wrong, but it is so good, and I wish I actually owned a physical copy of it. It is amazing and really moving and powerful, just about like abusive relationships and finding yourself and figuring out your identity, and just like it's so good, and it's so moving, and it's beautiful. I also finally finished Nevernight in October, so Dark Dawn is definitely on my top reads of the year list, because I'm a hoe for Mia. It's just so good, and I'm glad that I read it with a bunch of people, because J. Kristoff, you rip my heart out and you stomp on it, and then somehow you like stab it and make it worse. But that book is so good, and I love it, and I can't wait to reread the series, and it's just, I love it. I love it so much. And then my last pick for October is Gideon the Ninth. I think October was a hard month for me to pick books, but I loved Gideon the Ninth. I think it's really different and complex and interesting, and I just really enjoyed the book. I know that I feel like people are divided on it, but I love it, and I can't wait to finish Haro this month. But it's really good, and like Gideon is so cool. I love Gideon, and it's just really good. Just go read it. And I wish I had read it in October. I meant to read it in October in 2019, and I didn't, so I read it this year in October, and it is November. I don't have many picks because it was NaNoWriMo, but I did pick Station 11, which my friend Alyssa sent me because I was having a rough time in November, and it is really good. It follows this troupe of like Shakespearean actors in this post-apocalyptic world that's like post-pandemic, and so it's a really eerie read to read now given our times, but it's like about like the rebuilding of society essentially, and just like what happens when the world collapses, and it's also flashes back to like people's last days and to like their lives before the fall essentially, and it's just really beautifully written, and it's just go read it. It's so good. It's really good. And then I'm kind of gonna lump these all together, but I read Heartstopper 1 and 2 in November, and then I read like the first day of December 3. So like Heartstoppers 1, 2, and 3 were like just, again, I was having a really hard time in November, and they were just my sweet little pick-me-up, and I love Nick and Charlie, and I've got nothing bad to say. They're just so sweet and so innocent, and just like the things that they deal with, like dealing with like a man with an eating disorder, dealing with stress, anxiety, coming out, being bisexual, being gay, bullying. Like, it's so well done, and I can't wait to read book 4, and I can't wait to start reading more Alice Oseman, because I think she's phenomenal, and I can't believe that it's taken me this long to find her. So finally, we are at December. So in December, of course, I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Like, if you've seen me say anything on the internet, I've talked about how much I love that book. That book just, I don't know why, because when I hear people's arguments about why it's not great, like, I kind of can see it. But for me, this book was a mood. For me, this book was an emotion. Like, for me, this book was about being lost and anonymous in the world and just trying to survive, and the power of finding somebody who sees you and understands you and values you and cherishes you, and the things that you would give up for that human. I thought it was absolutely moving and wonderful, and I cannot speak highly enough about it, and I wish I could read it for the first time again. It's just so good. Of course, I also loved The Poppy War. That book was phenomenal, and that was our TBR Lowdown pick for December, and I'm supposed to be starting Dragon Republic soon, and I haven't yet. But it was really, really well done and really, really moving, and I thought it was a very interesting way to explore Chinese history, and not in like a traditional historical fiction manner, but putting it into like a historical fantasy setting. I thought it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed reading interviews and blog posts talking about what the different things in this book are representing, and learning more about that history. I think that it's a really great book to start a conversation, to start a learning process about something that we don't, at least here in the US, learn enough about. Like, I know Opium Wars as a like paragraph in a textbook. I don't know about them as like an actual, like I would know about like the Revolutionary War, which we talked about ad nauseum, right? So in school. So it's really lovely to add to my global knowledge of the world. And then my last pick is gonna be a book that it's a backlist book that I wish more people talked about, and that's A Madness So Discreet by Mindy McGinnis. I just thought that this book was a really, just at its surface, a really nice sort of YA, dark kind of mystery almost book. I don't think it's really a mystery, but like, yeah, I guess it is a mystery. But really at its core, it's a discussion about what is madness, and like, what does it mean to be mad? What does it mean to have mental illness? How is mental illness, I mean, this is set in like the 1800s, but it's like, how is it 1800s, or is it like Georgian period? I can't remember, but it's olden times, and what it was like to be a woman, where you could just be locked up because you got pregnant in an asylum, where it deals with incest and abuse. There's a lot of trigger warnings, but it's really subtly it's really good. Like, I really enjoyed this book. I like books that discuss mental illness and discuss that line between sanity and insane, and like, where do we, and like things that discuss like vicious and vengeful, like which you would think were on this list, but I must have read other things that were amazing those months. Discuss the line between like good and evil, and like those things that we feel like are really black and white. Like, talking about that gray area I really enjoyed that. So I thought A Madness So Discreet was really good about talking about that particular little gray area in mental health, and like who decides what's sane and what's insane. So I just really like that. So those are the 3 times 12, 36 books that I loved this past year. I know that was a little bit long, and thank you for bearing with me. I don't know if anybody's even made it this far, but if you have, leave down below corgi, and I will will see you guys in my next video. I'm gonna wrap this up nice and quick because I rambled enough. I'll see you in my next video, whenever it may be, because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
So just sit with me.